don't know. I was from We are here to go through two documents actually. I'm just going to run through the program quickly, and we are hoping that the sessions actually will be smooth, will be flawless, will just be what you expect it to be. Okay, not the IRC, but us. We continue to review DOMLEC's tariff, and it's a process that is interesting. It has its challenges, but it's interesting, and we know that we are doing it for a purpose and we expect good results. So this afternoon, as we are on this at this juncture, we are going to look at two
move together for the benefit of our customers, our communities, our shared future. With that said, let's begin. Thank you.
Edwards will now come and share with us presentation. And remember, it's on the 5-year investment plan, so listen attentively and have your questions.
Those I'm going to say radio land, but those listening from overseas or remotely, and those here, and people being here. My role here is to share with you our 5-year investment plan. Presentation is short because the plan itself is basically designed to run DOMLEC's operation for a period of time. What we provided was, at the time, was a 5-year investment plan. What I want to go through with you is what exactly is a 5-year investment plan. How the company comes about determining what it's going to do in relation to its investment.
Recording in progress.
And what has happened to our presentation and based on the IRC review. Now, like every company, you must have a plan. So we start off with a strategic objective. And that strategic objective drives what's going to happen to the company for a period. It be a month, a year, a 3-year period, or a 5-year period as we have provided in this case. These strategic objectives have to be delivered by the departments, right? So you're going to get contributions from all the different departments to make up what we call a complete strategic plan. So you have the IT department. So you may say, what does IT have to do with electricity? But IT do have to produce a plan, right? Objectives have to be stated. You hear about a lot of hacking, a lot of cyber attacks and so on. IT's role is to ensure that the infrastructure is as hack-free as possible. So IT has to contribute to that plan, to their development of the IT infrastructure. We also have the T&D section. Now, this is what most people associate with electricity. Go back. So this is what most people associate with electricity. Running lines, poles, different infrastructure. They have their role in developing that strategic plan. What you will find is that the contribution will be more in terms of how do we get the power to the customer. To the customer, the grid, as we call it, has to be maintained. And that has to be determined by the T&D section. We have to determine what they're going to deliver to you and how best they're going to deliver it to you, the customer. The same is true for generation. They have to produce the power. We have to provide sustainable power as interrupt-free as possible, as with very little interruption. So the generation department has a role of one, combining our diesel and our hydro, which is the two and they are supposed to provide information, sorry, that will allow the company alone to be able to produce the power that is needed. Now, all the departments make a contribution, right? But there's a cost to it. You have an investment on the department. Whatever they decide to do has a cost. And what we do at in the finance department is we collate all the costs, right, associated with maintaining and delivering a strategic plan into the departmental cost. We collate to review what the company's cost is overall. So what you see in an investment plan is what the company has to invest in order that they are able to deliver electricity in a manner that they prescribe, the manner they foresaw at the beginning of the period, and that is what we as a company should deliver. So we have a rule to present a plan to the IRC. Right? The IRC has to look at it because it goes along with IRC has to look at it because it goes along with a lot of different justifications for the type of projects we're going to undertake. And the IRC has to review the projects in light of the
Criteria.
no, not the criteria, the criteria, and to make a decision on what they will grant to DOMLEC. All right. So in 2024, DOMLEC's total investment came to $26.6 million. That's what they proposed. All right. In 2025, it was $25.1 million, and in 2026 and 27, $10.4 million. Now that proposal was made to the IRC. As you can see, the generation department basically was responsible for generating most of that cost. As you know, they run the generators. It has to be maintained. Frequent overhauls according to running hours, and we saw that there was $15.5 million in allocated in 2025. In 2026, it was 2.9, sorry, and in 2027 it was 3.0. So the generation basically was responsible for the major part of our generation, of our investment. Okay. Now we presented that plan to the IRC for review, and the IRC, after taking a look at that plus our justification for each of the projects, they decided that they were not going to give us the quantum that we asked for, right? So, so we actually got a percentage based on what the IRC considered to be our ability to, or us have a plan to do in relation to the strategic plan. So for 2024, we were granted, out of the 25 million, we were granted approval to spend 18 million. For 2025, we also will granted $18 million as our expenditure. And for 26 and 27, we were granted $8 million each. Right? Now, the IRC is the one who allows you the leeway to spend or to invest if you wanted to become part of the regulatory assets. Right? You may go ahead and spend some money in addition to what you've been granted. However, if the IRC does not approve it, it does not form part of the regulatory assets. Okay, so so that is what we applied for. As I said, 25 in 25 in 20. Yeah, so out of what we applied for, what we got was 18, 18, 8 and 8. And that's what we present in here for your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. He was short and to the point. I hope that he understood so far what he's saying in terms of the 5-year investment plan. The questions will come right after IRC's. Sorry about that. Okay, the questions will come right after Mrs. Louis has presented on behalf of the IRC. Okay, we'll go into the questions and answer segment at that point. So at this point, I'm going to call Mrs. Louis. Will come and present on behalf of IRC our proposal to DOMLEC on the subject matter. Okay, good afternoon. Okay, so I'm just here to give a summary of the work we did as it relates to the review of the capital investment plan. So, as we know, IRC, of course, is governed by the Electricity Supply Act, and on that instrument, we are required to regulate DOMLEC's operation. As part of our review, we also contracted the service of our regulatory consultant. She worked on critical components of our tariff process, which a number of deliberation was done already at previous consultation as it relates to the depreciation study, the weighted average cost of capital, and now we are looking at the public consultation for the revenue requirement and the investment plan. Then the next consultation it will be a cost of service on the rate proposal study. So we are at the leg of the third public consultation. Now, the next slide. Now the IRC is required to review DOMLEC's capital investment plan. And the capital investment plan more or less enable us to look at the amount of money that DOMLEC will spend over a 5-year period as it relates to investment in generation, transmission and distribution assets and other fixed assets, which of course Mr. Edwards highlighted to make the day-to-day operation of DOMLEC's operation. Now, IRC, as part of the process, what we are concerned that the capital investment plan will do for DOMLEC it will aim to improve reliability, increase generation capacity and reduce system loss, improve the health and safety, and replace obsolete assets that DOMLEC may have. Now, the Commission hopes to ensure that we are not managing DOMLEC, but what we want to ensure that we want to satisfy ourselves that DOMLEC is undertaking investment in accordance with its Sustainable Resilient Energy Plan or its strategy plan, and that each capital investment plan is aligned to the investment activity. So DOMLEC capital investment plan was submitted to the IRC in November 2022. And we can say, well, why is now we are doing the capital investment plan? Now, this of course allowed us to go for a lot of deliberations. So we had meetings. After meetings, a number of review had to be done. A number of changes was done as a result of collaborative discussion between DOMLEC and IRC. And then the final communique to us was submitted on May 14th, 2024. Now, what is the next slide, please? Now, at that time, DOMLEC capital investment plan was shown for 2023, 2024, up until 2027. That's why we call it a 5-year capital investment plan. And the total investment there was 88 million. Now, we are not focusing too much on 2023 and 2024 because why? 2023 is gone already. 2024, we are at the end of 2024. But just for transparency, we just showed you what was requested at that time. So our emphasis more or less is on 2025, 2026, and 2027. As part of our review, so we see on the number of departments: generation, commercial, T&D, engineering, administrative, finance, information technology. As part of the review, we had to review the justification report. So they submitted to the IRC shared data file which shows the budgetary allocation for each line item. Okay, and the justification report, it was based on key components like priority areas. So this included projects that DOMLEC considered were critical, projects that they needed to do some upgrade, and also we were concerned about the provider's justification as it relates to cash flow or cash savings that they will derive from the investment. We were able to reconcile the justification form for each project against the budgetary allocation. And then as part of our review, we were also able to analyze DOMLEC's implementation capability for undertaking the capital investment plan. Now, as part of our review, we saw that the implementation capability ranged between $12 million to $18 million on an annual basis, and we use historical information from 2015 to 2023. Now, from that, we did not consider investment undertaken in 2016 and investment undertaken in 2018. Why? Because that was a restoration period following Tropical Storm Erica in 2015 and Hurricane Maria in 2017. So because what you will find in 2016 and 2018, for example, the network was totally destroyed. So the implementation capability would be significantly higher because they needed to restore the system. So we consider the implementation capability based on the normal operation, normal course of doing business. Hence, we felt that over the trend, if you look at the notes to the financial statement, the amount of assets they were able to acquire throughout that period, and that formed one of the bases. So the basis was, as I said, what was critical, what they needed to do upgrades to, what the benefit to be derived in terms of cost saving, and all that was detailed on the justification report. Now, as I indicated, of course, we did not include 2023 and 2024 because these years have passed. 2023 has passed and 2024 is about to close. So therefore, based on the review that we undertook, DOMLEC proposal for 2025, 2026, and 2027 total is 45.9 million. So we've seen 25.1 million in 2025, 10.4 in 2026, and 10.4 in 2027. This is what DOMLEC is proposing. Again, based on our review and the implementation capability and what we think DOMLEC can afford, and because sometimes you may find that people may overstate their budget. You may have slacks in budget. We did not factor that, but we look at what DOMLEC is able to meet, having the discussion, doing the meetings, looking at the justification. So therefore, we felt that it is reasonable to undertake to approve investment of 8 million for 2026, 8 million for 2027. So we are requesting that the proposed budgetary allocation for 2025 to 2027 be 34 million. However, the audience is there, the stakeholders, those online, those present in this room, those who will come later, can deliberate and find out whether it's reasonable that IRC or we as stakeholder consider DOMLEC's figure of 45.9 million or IRC's figure of 34 million for the capital investment plan for that period, 2025 to 2027. This, of course, concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Very, very precise, to the point, clear. Well, to me, was it to you? Was it clear enough for you?
Yes.
Okay, we are on the question part, Mr. Paul, you're anxious to ask your questions. We are right on there, and Miss John Baptist is going to put on the questions on the screen for both those who are in person and those who are online. Mr. Edwards has done a very good summary of DOMLEC's proposal, and he showed us what DOMLEC presented, what IRC is proposing. Mrs. Louis herself came and she did the very same thing as to what IRC is presented and why we decided to adjust DOMLEC's proposal. So this was very kind. It's still on the board, so we can see it is the adjustments. Our question to the public, and it is hoped that the document that we shared with you, that's our consultative document, that you got to look at it to get some more details from it, and the questions can be, better understood. Question number 1 is on the board, and we're going to engage everybody. So don't leave me in the cold. Please look at the question. I will read it. It says, number 1, do respondents agree with the methodology utilized by the IRC in reviewing DOMLEC's 5-year investment plan for 2025 to 2027 that allows the investment plan to be aligned with its implementation capabilities ranging from EC 12 million to EC 18 million, or an average of EC 15 million per annum. The respondents agree with the methodology that we used. And if not, oh, sorry, the question. You would like to ask a question? Yes. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Paul. Yes. Sure. We have a mic that we can.
Okay.
So we will take the questions as they come along. Mr. Paul will ask his question.
Yeah, good afternoon. Let me thank IRC for having the consultation, because I figure any company giving public good should really have something like this. My question is, I would expect that if you have some capital investment, it would be driven by something. DOMLEC is in the business of producing electricity and selling it. So I would figure that you would have a demand forecast, so that the demand forecast inform the investment. So I wanted to know whether there was a demand forecast and how it plays in this business now.
Yeah.
So our panel will answer as. Go ahead, Mr. Edwards.
Yes. DOMLEC does produce a demand forecast. The last numbers I recall is in the range of 16 megawatts, which can be delivered by our production plant. However, it is within what, how I put it, the production capacity of DOMLEC. So yes, there was a plan, and that would have been provided to the IRC.
In your revenue, I noticed fuel surcharge is about 41% of your operating costs, right? I would expect that right now, if there's no rate increase at all, and you get rid of fuel surcharge, the consumer would benefit immediately. A drop in what they have to pay, okay?
Yes, they would.
I would expect that what we should be moving to is to do renewables. And I would expect even for the solar, that the solar you all would have put that in place or proposed to put it in place this coming years.
Hello. Yes, Mr. Paul, the situation of the renewables, in the generation space right now, you have the geothermal plant, which is progressing, and based on the demand projections, although we would like, or will ultimately end up with a generation mix that will include solar, wind, and geothermal, the focus right now is on geothermal, because it's a more formidable form of renewable energy in terms of providing base load. So the undertaking of the geothermal project is a huge undertaking by the government of Dominica. DOMLEC doesn't really have the financial capacity right now to pursue any renewable project directly. So if you notice how the geothermal project is being done, it is modeled as an IPP, which is an independent power producer that will construct the plant and deliver generation to DOMLEC to sell to the customers. In line with where you're going, it will be or should be cheaper in the final analysis.
Just to mention also, in the number of 25 and 26 million we produced for 2024, 3 and 24, we had included the production of a solar farm in there. But as mentioned by Mr. Case, the geothermal takes precedent, and we do not have a hand in actually producing. So we will be takers, but basically production will be done by an IP.
Yeah, but isn't so, okay. Isn't our policy saying that we should have a mix? We should have different forms of generation. Yeah.
Okay, so the National Energy Policy was ratified in 2021 by Parliament. The roadmap that is being utilized for the development of renewable energy in Dominica is guided by, at this moment, by the SREP, which is the Sustainable Renewable Energy Plan. Now, in that plan, there's a mix. There's geothermal, there's wind, there's hydro, and, wind, solar, and batteries. So, yes, but we cannot invest in a way that will exceed the demand in any point in the along the time, the period we're looking at. Because if we do, we will have a situation of unserved energy that DOMLEC has to pay for, but nobody cannot use. So we have to be very careful how we optimize the demand to suit, optimize generation, to suit the demand that is available.
Okay, my last question on that. So do you have a demand forecast saying that you'll not be able to, okay, do we have, can you see the demand in the time the geothermal will come on stream, that the geothermal would take all that into?
Okay, so what it is that there are a lot of infrastructural projects going on. The timeline for these projects to be completed, for example, the international airport is like 2027. We expect the geothermal plant to be online by the end of 2025. So I would say yes to that, okay? Because these projects hopefully will be concluded around that time, okay? And the aim is to have all our electricity from renewable sources by 2030. So we are on our way to achieving that. So if it means that we have geothermal and we have exploited or built enough geothermal plants to a certain size, then we can look at other technologies. And solar is at the top. DOMLEC was awarded the solar plant as a contingency measure in the event that the geothermal wouldn't have come in, or started, at the time it started. Now that it has been started, the solar now will be delayed until such time that it is ready for them to do so. Okay, but for now, we have to be very careful, because otherwise we don't want a situation where we have, as I say, unserved energy, where we have a lot of energy on the grid, and there's not enough demand to utilize that energy.
Additional to add to what Mr. Case said, we have a number of machines that are basically way past the end of life. So as we bring in geothermal into the mix, there will be a number of machines that will be retired, a number of generators that will be retired, because they are acting up now. As you can see, we have been load shedding. Their maintenance cost is extremely heavy. So while we will get new generation through geothermal, we will also be retiring some of the machines as well.
Okay, Mr. Paul, you...
No, I have to let other people know.
No, I'm just asking you to satisfy with your responses.
Not really.
It's okay.
Okay, thank you. We have somebody else. He has the mic already.
Yes,
We should say identify yourself when you're asking the question, sorry.
My name is Ian Dorival. I have a few questions regarding the budget and your approach, that IRC approach in delivering the, reducing the amount that DOMLEC submitted. As we, or most of us know, a budget is a plan. You could put anything in a budget. You could bump up your budget, you could do whatever you want with a budget. But my issue is, I know this started before 2024, so did IRC ever look at what DOMLEC project was compared to what they delivered during the year? So for example, in 2020, they said they were going to do $20 million. Did they do $20 million or did they do $10 million? This is something that probably should be looked at prior to coming up to that figure. Let me answer that question.
Yes, of course, we did that. So that is why we look at historical information. We had DOMLEC's capital investment plan for prior years, because every year DOMLEC is supposed to provide us with the 5-year investment plan, or if it's a rollover plan. So as part of our comparison, we looked at their investment plan from 2015 to 2019, and we were able to determine under each department the number of projects, the number of projects that were completed, the number of projects that were deferred to another period, and the number of projects that were deferred totally and completely. So we were able to see the percentage, if it's 70% of the budgetary item for 2012 or 2015 or 2018 and so on for the years, whether or not that percent, they met 100% of it, or whether they met 80% of it. So we had those schedules that showed the percentage of completion as per the budgetary allocation for prior years and the percentage of the implementation capability. And we did an average. In some instances, it was 70. In some instances, it was 80. But when we average everything, it remained within a 60 to 70% completion. Excellent. So this was done.
Excellent.
Yeah, Mr. Dorival, I get the impression that you want actual figures.
Yes.
Okay, so right, because remember the 5-year plan started in 2023. So 2023 has gone, 2024 is going. So can you give him what the expenditure for those periods to date?
For 2024, I'll use that because this is the current year. As of October, we spent $11 million, right? That's the capital expenditure. For the 2023, I think it was 11 and 18 for 2022.
So your actual spending in 2023 was 11, and your budget was how much back then? 16. 2023.
2023 was 26.
26, and you only spent 11. Oh, that's a big drop.
Now
Okay, a little bit in. I think we're talking just pure figures, and we're not adding any context to our discussion. So let us use 2023 for example. It's all well and good to say DOMLEC spent only so much in capital projects, but the context we need to add is there was the issue with load shedding, they had 2 red generators. So these things affect the cash flow and their ability to absorb certain of those projects. So yes, as much as I would like the number to come down, just as much as you know, sometimes it's not just about pure looking at numbers. It's looking at the context of what is happening at the time and how it fits into the bigger picture.
Yeah, so something else we have to recognize is that in the figures we have 26 and 25 in 2025. That included solar, a projection for solar, which based on discussions and the advancement of the geothermal, that will no longer happen at the time it was supposed to happen. So yes, 25 and 26 looks like big numbers, but it included projections for solar energy there.
Thank you. Okay, while the mic is going to Elizabeth, we have a question from online. I would like to share it so it can be answered by the panelists. With the proposed capital investment of 34 million for the 3 years, that's what IRC is proposing. Will that amount be enough for DOMLEC to operate effectively and make a reasonable profit on the investment?
Well, for DOMLEC, the figure we proposed was higher than the 33 that IRC approved, or at least decided to bring to you for approval. It doesn't give us the type of leeway we need to improve profitability to the maximum and to do all the investments that we need. So I do think it helps improve our financial position and our liquidity, but I would believe that a figure closer to the number that we propose would be maybe the more ideal figure to come up with.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Any other questions to the panelists on the 5-year investment plan and the proposal? We look like we're happy with what we're hearing. So we'll go to our question because we were ahead of ourselves earlier. The first question. These are the questions we are getting out of the way so that we can continue with the process of approving or reaching a decision on that particular parameter. Question number 1, do you want me to read it again? Okay, nice.
Good afternoon.
So do you agree? Oh, Liz, you have a question?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I can go, right? Good afternoon, I'm Elizabeth Hill. Just a quick question. I know the plan is for 5 years, but we chose to do 3 years. Why don't we do 2029 and give it a 5-year?
The DOMLEC's capital plan is submitted to the IRC in a rolling 5-year fashion. However, the tariff, the period is 3 years. So it is, yes, we spoke up to 2023, 2024, but the tariff going to kick in 2025, which is what will be, well, it so happened that it will turn out that it will work out okay because of that three-year period for the tariff. So it kicks in 2025, 26, 27, then we have the rolling capital expenditure, and then by the end of 2027, we have a new tariff review. So it kind of falls, I would say, at the right time for us to look back and also look forward as to how DOMLEC is progressing and what's the impact of those capital projects. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes. Just another one. In terms of the context that Mr. Timothy spoke to and he explained, did we at the IRC took into consideration that explanation when we put in those numbers? I know you spoke about historical data.
Yeah, the short answer to that is yes, and I'll let Connie provide a little more detail on that.
Yeah, just to add, we took into consideration all the factors that are critical in deriving at DOMLEC's, the proposal for DOMLEC. So for example, at the meetings we had in-house meetings with DOMLEC. There was certain activity that DOMLEC felt that they would streamline. So for example, even if you have the justification report, one of the activities they might see is that although it is factored for 2023 or 2024, because of certain constraints, for example, it may be cash flow or so on, that project might be pushed back to another period. So we factor that, and we factor as well all the concerns raised. DOMLEC, of course, felt that they could work with that figure, and also that given the concerns that we raised, which of course that the implementation capability, we looked at, okay, over the years you were able to execute these activities, but your budget is way out of whack in some instances. And of course, they also provided us with their strategic plan. So in arriving at this determination, we factor all those concerns. What is critical, where they were able to derive cash flow, where they were able to derive cost savings, and looking at their liquidity position in terms of implementation was factored as well.
I have a short question before we move to the questions. Now, providing that we agree to these numbers, these capital numbers, which will basically make up the rates going forward for the 3 years. Going forward, if DOMLEC only do a fraction of this capital, what happened to this rate that was approved? Was that would approved based on this capital expenditures?
Well, not really.
Okay, let me repeat. Now, these capital expenditures and the revenue base, this is what you use to determine what your rate's going to be like. Now, going forward, you approve 18, whatever the numbers are, $34 million. For that 3 years, the rates are approved based on this capital expenditure. However, during that 3 years, only $15 million was spent on capital expenditure. What happened? In actual going forward, what happens in terms of those rates was approved based on your budgeted amount? But in actuality, they did not do, they only do a percentage of it.
Well, one of the key things that we would factor is whether that factor we would consider it as being should be factored as part of the regulatory asset base.
Jason would like to add something.
Okay, so the other thing is, after the 3 years, there is going to be another tariff review. So that information would then feed into the next tariff review, because as explained earlier, what guided the IRC in some of the reduction was the amount of money used, the completion rate, etc. And that guided the IRC to reduce the amount. So if over the next 3 years, there is DOMLEC doesn't use as much as they are allowed for whatever reason, and in the IRC's determination, it's not justified, then there would be a reduction in what they would be allowed in the following tariff period. Does that answer your question?
Hold on, Jason, is that reduction, I prefer to say adjustments. So would be made in the following tariff period. So that's how it works. So the tariff will remain what it is, the base rates, but then if there's DOMLEC doesn't spend as much in their capital program, then it is the adjustments are made in the next tariff period.
Just to add, as part of the revenue requirement, even if they have, let's say 18 million for the capital investment, we also look into take into consideration the capex that is factored into the rate base. So although they might have 18 million, we only factored, let's say, 9 million as part of capital expenditure in determining the revenue requirement. So that is why I was saying, therefore, that what the investment that they took will form part of the regulatory asset base, and anything thereafter, it might go into a next tariff period if it is considered something justifiable or approved by the commission. So the regulatory asset base are what the commission consider used and useful. So for this, for the test year we are looking at, which is 2023, we only factor 9 million based on capital expenditure. I hope I answered your question.
I believe so. Okay. Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashma Maldulo. I appreciate the methodology that you explained earlier. I think my question really lies in understanding what are the exogenous variables that we'll probably use to guide the methodology that's being proposed, because I've heard a lot of like the, intrinsic, the historical data, the trends, but like, what about demographic information? Mr. Paul mentioned the forecast of demand, but what about other economic indicators? Will they also take into consideration forecasting for the next 5 years?
Well, as I indicated, what we factored is we're looking at the tariff and what DOMLEC would like to consider as part of this review. So at the end of it all, DOMLEC was the one who prepared the budget. DOMLEC was the one who indicated what was critical. So we took that as a way going forward to arrive at a proposed decision. So the capital investment plan, as per the department, as per each cost driver was more or less factored. I don't know if I...
Okay, so Connie, to add to what you're saying, Connie said, we also looked at some of the projects, especially in the technical operations areas of DOMLEC, to see how they would improve in reliability and efficiency in delivering DOMLEC's service to its customers. Okay, so each of the cost centers, you see there are different criteria. All the criteria wasn't as one size fit all. So for information technology, we'll look at different key performance indices that would feed into what is selected or what we recommend with DOMLEC they should pursue. But for the generation T&D, it has to do with reliability, efficiency. For the other areas, somewhat, but it was measured against other indices.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay.
Well, okay, so
we go.
Yes. With regard to the second part of it, with regards to recommendations, because I did not really hear too much of the external variables in the methodology. So my question would be, is there consideration perhaps, well, I guess DOMLEC, because you did indicate that they were the ones that proposed, so I'm assuming that they are the ones who probably applied it within their analogy. Is there consideration for DOMLEC then, I did not hear you say it, to perhaps incorporate or implement, I guess, in their analysis, more external variables, because I've been hearing a lot of internal ones.
Mr. Edwards?
Well, in DOMLEC, in preparing their plan, we took into consideration what we some of the external variables that you mentioned. We looked at the possibility of a load increase. We looked at basically what for us as a company, right, would drive us to be one, very productive, very consistent in our delivery of power, and still be profitable. So the assets investments that we chose was all of those were to us and are determined by our strategic plan, very essential to one, delivering on investment and becoming profitable, because as you know, we have not been very profitable for quite a number of years. And so the IRC took a different approach, and they felt that we should be given less. So I guess the decision is up to you all now.
No, but how? You're almost raising the concern there, you know. If you're saying you're given less and it will be difficult for you to operate, are you saying that it's very likely we'll find ourselves in the situation? Yeah, there'll be load shedding and blackouts and stuff like this. Is it that you said?
No, I'm not saying, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that with the allocation that we get after this consultation, we will adjust our capital program to ensure that the most critical items of investment are made. But we may not get everything we want out of what may be approved today, but it will allow us to adjust accordingly. We will adjust accordingly.
I have a question based on what you just said. So more than likely, perhaps you have your discretionary and your mandatory. Based on what is being proposed, what is being allocated by the IRC proposed, would it cover all of the mandatory investments?
Yes, it would. All the critical ones will be covered.
I have a further question. Now, with all what you say in there in terms of your projection and your capital expenditure and your adjustment in rates, which I am anticipating is an increase, did you consider whether the public can afford to take these increases now in the current economic status of this country? Has that been considered, whether you will increase your rate and then you'll have everybody disconnecting because they cannot afford to pay you? Has that been considered?
Okay, so the Commission is mandated to work in the interest of all, try to balance the interests of all parties, but with emphasis, if you look at the way the Act is written, there's emphasis on the public interest. So we tend to take the public interest very seriously, and the question you're asking fits into that. Now, what you're asking, we have not yet finalized what they call the cost of service study, which is the next tranche of information that we are going to consult on, which will feed into what the final outcome, which is the rate proposal. So, yes, we are sensitive to the concerns of the public as to whether the rate will go up, and we have taken certain measures to, I would say, mitigate it. I can probably talk about that now. We have proposed changes to the tariff structure that will allow the customer to have choice by introducing what we call time of use. Okay, and all the projections and the data support this approach. And when the time comes, we'll have solid figures so we can discuss it further. But right now, we're focusing on the capital, 5-year capital expenditure plan that DOMLEC is. In simple linear terms, the lower the capital expenditure that is approved will also feed into lower calculations of the rate the base tariff rate. So this is what's considered by the IRC, and that is why we, based on all the different parameters we looked at in terms of assessing DOMLEC's ability to deliver as well as the critical projects, we were able to arrive at the quantities that we arrived at. So bear in mind that, in simple terms, what this is.
Thank you.
We have another online question. Take the mic. Yeah, go ahead. Take the mic.
Okay, the question is piggybacking on the query regarding indicators. What are the expected benefits of the CIP? How do consumers benefit, i.e., improved efficiency, better service reliability?
Well, in a nutshell, with the investments to be undertaken in terms of improving reliability and what DOMLEC consider critical, what DOMLEC consider to be critical, we think would improve the service delivery and as such help to improve like service quality for consumers as a whole. And
what are the expected benefits of the CIP? How do consumers benefit? And i.e. improved efficiency, better service reliability. I think they meant CPI, but they put CIP, yeah, Consumer Price Index.
Well, in the that factor would form part of the revenue requirement, because you have to look at the operating costs and the level of inflation as per the Consumer Price Index and how it would impact on costs.
So that's for the next session.
So that would form part of the next discussion under the revenue requirement component.
Noted.
So we note that concern.
Okay, so just to be clear, the individual is saying that CIP, the reference to CIP is the capital investment plan. Oh.
Well, again,
Repeat the question.
Okay, again, for clarity, what are the expected benefits of the capital investment plan? How do consumers benefit in terms of improved efficiency and better service reliability?
Okay, as said, one of the benefits of the capital investment plan is to improve service quality. So if they invest in assets, you might see a reduction in load shedding. You might see a reduction in energy loss. You might see an improvement in quality service, and therefore it will be a greater benefit to us all. So we will be satisfied with the service that DOMLEC is offering.
Hopefully.
We are hopeful that with this improvement, customers will be satisfied in terms of service delivery.
Okay, I hope the question is answered for the individual.
Okay,
That's it.
we're going to, okay, thank you. There's no further questions from the floor or from online, so we go into our main question. And once we answer question number 1, I think it's going to be smooth sailing for us. The recommendation for.
We agree.
Number one, do we agree first?
We agree.
Yeah. We agree?
Yes, all of us.
Mr. Dorival, you are saying for everybody. Number one. Okay, so we can move. So there's nothing to go to ask any more recommendations. We're good to go.
There is a question again from the Zoom in relation to question 1. Based on question 1, are there shovel-ready projects? If not, I would question the ability to make these investments starting in 2025. Also, what is the past record of investment and project implementation?
Mr. Edwards?
All of the projects that we cited in our capital investment plan are projects that can be implemented immediately. We can start the process. Some of them are long in terms of the duration, but all what was proposed are projects that can be started and implemented within the time frame that was provided in the justification.
Thank you. So we can now conclude question 1 and we say we all agree? Ayes have it.
We agree.
Yes. I like to go on Mr. Dorival's cue, so yeah. So we're moving on to question number 2. Remember, it says smooth sailing from there on, so do respondents agree with IRC's, the Commission's proposed capital investment plan for DOMLEC of 18 million in 2025, 8 in 2026, and 8 in 2027, rather than the proposed values of DOMLEC, 25 in 2025, 10.4 in 2026, and 10.4 in 2027. We agree with IRC? Yeah. Okay. I like to go on his cue, Mr. Paul, but I still need to hear you. We all agree the ayes have it? Okay. Okay. So we move into number 3. Remember, I told you it's slow. Do you believe whether the projects of 24.7 million for the 4.5 megawatt solar PV should be included in this rate base at this time, or that the rate should be reopened at a later stage if the timeline is confirmed, or alternative funding be considered for the investment in that solar PV project? You're free to ask a question.
So we believe that the project cost of $24.7 million
It's just
4.5. I think that we should have done that long time ago. We would have seen that benefit long time ago. So to talk now about it, and the geothermal cost, the capital cost of geothermal is so high. And don't be fooled, consumers. You're not going to see no drastic reduction in rates because of that geothermal, because the recouping of that cost.
Okay, so can I respond? These most parties that are interested in solar seems that they're influenced by the rapid deployment and easy deployment of that type of technology. However, it must be noted that the cost you see there does not include batteries for the solar project. That solar project, that's what was stated in the SREP as a no regrets project that would help to improve the energy base, but without batteries. Now, solar and wind are are considered to be intermittent sources of renewable energy. That means that it doesn't give you a steady output. So these projects there would have to be complemented with a battery system, which can be rather expensive. The reason why the focus is on geothermal is that you get a constant output like you get from a diesel generator. So the only difference is that instead of using diesel, using a heat source from the geothermal resource on the ground. Okay, so yes, a lot of money was spent. Most of it, which probably Jason can give you more details, was spent on the drilling, which was funded by grant money from the EU, probably grant and concessionary funding from the EU. Jason can provide more details on that. So one can say that based on the fact that you're getting a steady output, which can contribute to the base load, that the cost is worth it. And I'll hesitate to speak as to how low the tariff will go right now until the cost of service study is concluded. But there will be a drop in that because there will be no more volatility from month to month from the geothermal as you have from diesel. Okay, as you well know, this fuel surcharge could be 40 cents now, and next month it could be 60 cents or in between 50. So all of that has to be taken in consideration when we're looking at the technology, the renewable energy technology that we are investing in. So this is what I would say in response to your position.
We have a question online.
Yes. Let me see.
It's to do with question number 3.
Let me get Mr. Asaban. We are ready for you. Mr. Asaban, you can proceed with your question.
In terms of the targets set, okay, in terms of the capital investment, to meet basic objectives in terms of reduce losses for transmission and reduce cost of production, okay, and administrative costs. These are the things I was looking at to see how it could implement positively on the customer base. Okay, the customer's rate, sorry. I'm not clear. You have an investment of $25.7 million set for a few years, but there are certain objectives you have to meet. And then with my experience working on public utilities, we found that when we did competitive tendering, our actual costs based on what management had put forward to the board was reduced by 5%. So I was a bit concerned that when DOMLEC targets an investment, that is whether or not the capabilities to raise that money was the issue raised, rather than the investment. What are the objectives to meet with those investments? How is it going to lower, for instance, the long transmission, reduce the management costs, instead of using vehicles that are utility purpose, they're using more expensive vehicles in terms of reducing the administrative costs. So there are tremendous things that you could do to affect the cost to the consumer and also the investment cost. As I told you, when we did competitive tendering, we found that we had marked improvement in value. So I'm not sure what has been done in that direction. Okay, and these are the kind of things I would be looking for, because at the end of the day, we have to have DOMLEC to be competitive, their losses down, and their profit up to gain investments to meet whatever expansion they would need.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Stephen.
What are we doing to ensure that these areas are dealt with efficiently?
Okay.
in terms of the solar project, that basically never got off the ground. It was put forward as one of the projects we wanted to undertake. And I believe that it was supposed to be through competitive bidding also, but that was as one of the projects we wanted to undertake. And I believe that it was supposed to be through competitive bidding also, but that was a project that was shelved. As you can see, it was expected to start in 2023 and continue in 2024, but that has not happened. So that project basically was shelved because of the emphasis on power from the geothermal. So that basically didn't have to form part of the equation in determining whether we go forward with it.
Okay, so was it generally to procurement for, I think you were telling us general. What is it that implemented the purpose of
For example, the fuel.
Well,
fuel is done through competitive bidding, right? And it has been so for a number of years. In terms of vehicles, we compare prices, but I don't think we are involved in competitive bidding per se, as usually retailers tender. But we do ask the suppliers to provide for us it's a form of competitive bidding because they have to provide for us the best quotation they can, and and then based on what comes back to us. Another thing that we have to consider is sometimes the vehicles are needed with some urgency, and we have to work with what is available on the island. So complete competitive bidding, I don't think that is being done in relation to vehicles and so on. Yeah.
Are we answering further from you?
Yes. For instance, upgrade to a line, for instance, that is done via a competitive bidding, because we ask, we have some select contractors which we ask to bid. We circulate the documents, right, that will allow them to bid, and it does go through competitive bidding.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Edwards. Okay, so we're still on question 3, and it's not a straightforward yes or no answer. It has options.
We wish to be guided by the IRC because they probably have more information than we have
on the solar.
Okay, so
we're probably sure we're going to get that thing next year or so.
Yes, we have more information for sure, and we can say safely that the PV project will be considered, but not at this time, since the geothermal project is already in progress. And considering the load growth or the demand growth, that is what will drive adding capacity to the national grid. So, as I said earlier, we have to be careful that we don't just do projects for doing projects' sake. We have to follow the demand and ensure that we have enough demand at all times to meet, capacity at all times to meet the demand. So that's what it is. Okay, so it will be definitely considered at the right time.
But not during this tariff review period?
No, not during this tariff review period.
So do we agree?
I agree, not during this tariff period.
Okay. Is Mr. Dorival speaking for all of us?
Yeah.
I always do. I never think people speak for me.
So let's go, Ms. McDougall.
No, I mean, like, for me, I just feel like this is a question that goes beyond just putting do you believe. There's no kind of information that supports me analyzing whether it's something that we should consider or not. I mean, I kind of just from face value from this question say yes or no. Like it's
Okay, yes, Mr. Paul.
The geothermal going to be 10, right?
Yes,
10.10 N. Not
when?
again.
End of 2025.
When?
End of 2025. End of next year.
Yes.
Practical or?
Yeah, practical.
Okay.
Unless
So the hydro, the useful amount is free, right?
3.5.
Huh?
3.5.
3.5. So that's what? 13.5?
13.5, yes.
Okay.
That's 3.5 is the average.
Where the rest coming from, isn't it?
Right, so
All right, so this is what it is. You have the 10 megawatt geothermal and you have the 3.5 megawatt hydro, which is an average amount because it's seasonal. So you can get more output from the hydro when there's a lot of water and so on, but let's just use 3.5. Okay, so the peak is now about 17.6. Huh? 18? Oh, 18, I think, right. Okay, so what it is that when the geothermal plant is concluded, there will still be a need for some diesel, especially at peak time. Or peak time only lasts for half an hour, give or take. So the plan is we'll be monitoring the demand or load growth, after the geothermal plant is concluded. And there's the plan to add another 5 megawatts within 2 to 3 years after the first 10 megawatts is ready. Okay, it's commissioned. So all of that will be driven by demand. So we can just add and add and add and add. And this also has to do with the availability of capital at certain times, and if it is, affordable for the country to undertake these massive projects at any point in time due to the economy. So it's not just, we need 20 megawatts, so let's go and buy 20 megawatts and put it online. It doesn't work like that. It has to go, there are a lot of factors that have to be considered in agreeing to what technology is utilized, how much it costs, how much is it going to impact the tariff at the time, what we have available now. It's a whole set of parameters that go into that equation. So fundamentally right now the 10 megawatt is being built, then we have the hydro, there will still be the use of some diesel, but a significantly reduced amount of diesel will be utilized when the geothermal comes online. Yes,
okay,
Jason.
Mr. Paul, one other thing. Okay, so now we need to look at it from a technical standpoint.
Yeah.
Currently, when we talk about a peak of 18 megawatts, that's basically the whole island.
Yeah.
But because there is no transmission line from Roseau to Portsmouth, you are always going to need some diesel running in Portsmouth, always. So until either a transmission line is built to Portsmouth, one of the things we have to accept in our postulation is that for the time, there is always going to be some diesel on the system until further notice.
Agreed. Yeah, last one. DOMLEC, what's the growth rate in terms of yearly growth rate? In terms of
less than 3%.
Okay.
And
last are we considering very soon the international airport? The 1,000 hotels are supposed to come into 1,000 hotels are supposed to come in from CBI, the marina, all those big nice things. That's probably will give you another 5 megawatts of electricity will require another 5 or 6 megawatts of
Yeah, the answer is yes. And the transmission line that Jason spoke about is coupled with the construction of the geothermal, so that power can be efficiently transported to the various where it is needed on the island. So it is, the contract was just signed recently and the funds will be released for the contractor to start. I think DGDC can give us more information on that, but yes. So the reason for the transmission line mainly is to transport power efficiently to where it is needed in the island at the times it is needed. Now the projects that you speak about, especially the hotels, we have no idea when they will be concluded. Okay? Neither for the international airport they said 2027. So we just have to go with what they're giving us. But when we're doing demand analysis, we factor in all those possible demand increases from those projects. Yeah, okay, so that's what it is. So we don't ignore them. We actually, DOMLEC does its planning. When DOMLEC does its planning for load growth, all of that is considered. What the problem is that we have no definitive timeline as to when these projects will be completed, especially the hotel projects.
Thank you. Okay, so we are sorry.
Just to add to what Mr. K said, the transmission lines to deliver the geothermal power is for now going to be to Fokule, and I think the delivery to the north, which is where it will be needed to satisfy things like the airport and the whatever hotels, the marina, etc. That may be further along in coming. So I think one of the things that may be looked at is the possibility of having to use the geothermal for Fokule and generation, and possibly move some diesel generation to Portsmouth in the more immediate.
What Todd is trying to say is that there are diesel engines in Portsmouth already. However, the more efficient engines, when the geothermal comes on stream, will be relocated to that point for the period of time that leg of the transmission line is not ready.
Thank you very much. So we're about to move to question 4. However, I need to get a very good clearance on question 3. Question 3 clearance, please. We will leave the solar out for the period.
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 4. The respondents believe that DOMLEC's capital investment project for the 3 years, 25 to 27, are considered sustainable and achievable. And if not, please give your reasons. Do you believe that, or don't you believe that?
We believe that. DOMLEC could actually come for a capital investment and to think it's sustainable and achievable. As a big company, if we don't believe there's something wrong with us. So we believe it. Whether they stand back in it, that's another question, but we believe it.
Thank you, respondents. Moving on to question number 5. Anything from online on the question?
There is a comment. And the individual again says that Mr. Glenn Laville, I may have missed it, but with any capital investment plan, I would expect to see what DOMLEC's existing performance indicators are, identification of what their challenges are in satisfying the consumer, that is cost, reliability, efficiency, and how the capital investment plan addresses it. Highlighting what the expected outcomes of the capital investment plan are. Again, I may have missed it, and if there is a report in this regard, My apologies.
Okay, so we'll provide them.
These were deliberated upon already.
Yeah, it's okay. He missed it. We will provide it. So we're going to question number 5. Do you believe that the cost of the investment in DOMLEC's proposed capital investment plan will negatively impact its cash flow in the medium term? Going once. Do you believe? If yes, do you believe that the cost of the investments outweigh the benefit to be derived from this investment, or vice versa?
I would assume IRC would have deliberated with
Yes.
on that, and then they would have. That's why they came up with what
That's
the
why.
critical amount to be.
That's why Mrs. Louise's presentation would have explained that earlier.
So we agree with that. Once it's there,
And we're working, as Mr. K said, in the public's best interest. Very much.
So just for transparency, and we want to ensure that we get opinion from the floor, we felt that question should be, noted by the stakeholders.
And bear in mind that this document is published prior to our face-to-face, and we encourage persons, if you want to come to the office to sit with us to do face-to-face, interventions, that is also available while we're within. So we still have a little window before we close that period, so you're free to do that. Question number 6 that we're moving to. Do respondents believe that DOMLEC's, I'll just read it still. Do you believe that DOMLEC's proposed capital investment plan will result in efficient and reliable service to customers if implemented? And that's based on IRC's proposal and presentation to you, of course. Based on all what you heard this afternoon. You're okay. And we work in your best interest. Again. We won't work against you because we're paying a DOMLEC bill, so, right? Do respondents, question number 7, have any other related comments or recommendations? I know we gave quite a bit in the beginning, but are there any others that you want to just throw out before we move to part 2? We're trying to stick within time. We're not too far from it. We're a little out of it. So we're good to move on? Yes. Wonderful. Okay, thank you so far. Just 1 second. So we're striking the iron while it's hot, and we are moving to the revenue requirement. Mr. Edwards is going to make his way again to the podium. We have Mr. Vinage. Mr. Edwards is there, so I'm taking advantage of him. Mr. Bill Vinage, he is the consultant for DOMLEC, and he's going to present on that subject.
Hello? Okay, good. Someone needs to let me share my screen, if that's possible. Still can't share it. I'm not able to share my presentation. I don't Can you hear me okay? Can people hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but I
Yes,
think
okay. Okay, I'm trying to share my screen and it is not coming through. Okay, here we go. Thank you. Oh, hold on. Still not allowing me to share my screen. Okay, we can do it that way. As long as I can see it, I can talk, I can speak to it. Okay, very much. Thank you very much for making this possible. Last time I attempted to make it to Rousseau for a consultation, Hurricane Ernesto caused extreme difficulties. The revenue requirement, if we could go to slide 2, that'd be great. Next slide, please. While that slide's coming up, I'll speak in general terms. The revenue requirement is a culmination of a great deal of the work that we've done to date. It brings together the depreciation study that there's already been a consultation on. It brings together the weighted average cost of capital, and to that it adds primarily the operations, maintenance, and administrative expenses, purchase power expenses, fuel expenses, although the primary focus of today is on the base rate, so the fuel is just kind of an aside, but that is also part of the revenue requirement, but not the base revenue requirements. And then the return on capital, which is the rate base times the weighted average cost of capital. The rate base consists of net plants in service, which is the historical investments made in plant minus all of the cumulative depreciation made from the date of it went in service to the end of the year. CWIP, which stands for construction work in progress, that's projects that are in the process of being built but not yet in service. Working capital amounts, which is basically cash and other working capital amounts on hand to address both financial and operating needs. It consists primarily of cash, the net difference between accounts receivable and accounts payable, and inventories. Those are the principal among components of working capital. And then there are credits to the rate base, which are subtractions, which are basically sources of capital that are available to the company but do not have a hard cost associated with them. And in this case, those 3 items are customer deposits, capital grants, and then deferred income taxes. Those are all sources of cash to the company that are made available at zero or very low cost. So the revenue requirement is basically the fuel costs, although that's not the principal issue with today, purchase power costs, operations, maintenance, and administration expenses, depreciation expense, and then the return on capital, which is the rate base or the net investment across for the company, times the weighted average cost of capital, which is primarily interest expense profit returned to shareholders, and then the income taxes on that profit. Okay, if we could go to the next slide. Are you seeing the next slide? I can't see it on my screen, but I'm assuming you're seeing it. It says adjusted test year OM&A expense in EC dollars. And basically the starting point of the amount is for this case, it was 6 months of actuals for 2023, January through June. And then at the time this was put together, the 6 months forecast for July through December for 2023. And I've broken this out by operations, maintenance, and administration expenses. And the total actual plus 6 months forecast for the test year came out to be just a bit over $38 million EC. Now to that, in working with both the IRC, their consultant, and their review of the data, certain reductions in those amounts were made. There was a small $48 amount for the service standard penalties that were assessed in 2023. And then there was a $93,800 subtraction made for a subset of the contractor's fees, which are not appropriate for the revenue requirements. In addition, there was discussion about getting more efficiency in the system, and a 1% productivity adjustment. Basically 1% was deducted from each of the items, taking out a total of just over $460,000 EC. So that reduced the 38 million to 37,600,000. The next slide, which talks about the rate base. Used to see the total rate base was $163.7 million EC, and that is the average rate base over the test year. So it's basically the balance on all these accounts in the first day of the year, what the projected balance was at the end of the year, and then the average of those two to get to the average balance across the year. The plant in service amount was $398 million EC. From that, roughly $220 million of the depreciation reserve was subtracted out. The average balance of the construction works in progress over the year was $7.8 million. The working capital amount, which is based on, somebody correct me if I get this wrong, but I think I have it correct. It's based on basically a 45-day payable assumption plus the inventory amounts, and that is 25.6 million. And then the other rate base items, those credits, the capital grants, the deferred income taxes, and the customer deposits were a subtraction of roughly $41 million. So the amount on the books for the year on average was $171 million EC. Two additional adjustments were made for that. There's some land in use, I believe it's up by the airport, that is being held for future use, but it is not in current use. So that is not what we in the vernacular we use is it's not used and useful. So that should be subtracted out of the rate base, and that was $1.4 million. And then the inventory amount was a bit bloated after Hurricane Maria. A lot of stuff needed to be brought in, and that is not reflective of normal operating conditions, the amount that's there. So they're I think the term that was used in the discussions was the slow moving inventory, which is going to be there a while, and there was an excess amount of that was estimated to be just shy of $6 million. So 7.3 million was determined to be the required adjustment to bring the rate base down from the 171 to 163.7. And so, next slide. If you add all those amounts up, unfortunately, I got a version of this slide sent in. I think I sent it in too late. I did a subtotal of the non-fuel items, but the total expense for all of those items is 113,429,455 EC dollars. The fuel portion of that, which is handled through the fuel clause as a pass-through, so it's really not extremely pertinent for determining what the base rates are, was about 46.5 million for the test year. That amount, as you can imagine, is and this is why it's typically handled as a pass-through, is very sensitive to the price of diesel fuel on the world markets. So that number can vary significantly from one year to the next. It can go down significantly. It can go up significantly. But in 2023, it was roughly 46.5 million. Next year, it'll be something else, and we'll see where the oil markets go. So the next four bullets are really the ones to focus on for the discussions of the revenue requirements. And those amounts, I did a quick calculation. Those sum up to, excuse me, $66.9 million EC. The amounts in there are a small amount of $61,000 for purchase power expense. The adjusted O operations, maintenance, administrative expense, which I discussed on a previous slide, was $37.6 million in round numbers, EC. The depreciation expense, which basically takes the plant balances and the forecasted additions to plant over the year and applies the depreciation rates that were decided upon in the previous consultation. Those rates and those plant balances derive a depreciation amount of just shy of $13.3 million in depreciation expense. And then the return on capital is $16.1 million in round numbers, and that is the $163.7 million of rate base times the pre-tax weighted average cost of capital of 9.82%. Breaking that into its component parts, the investor return is 9.2 million of the 16.1 million. Interest expense is 3.8 million of the 3.8 million of the 16.1 million, and income taxes comprise 3.1 million of the 16.1 million. The next slide just does a graphical layout of those various things. I did combine fuel and purchase power because the purchase power was such a tiny piece, but it demonstrates just how dominant of the total revenue fuel and O&M really are. Depreciation is the next piece, and then investor return, interest expense, and income taxes follow. I saw I had a very short period of time allotted to me, so I tried to keep this brief, but if anyone has any specific questions now, although it sounds like based on the first segment, they were holding the questions off until the later after Connie does her piece. So thanks so much for indulging me, and I'm here to listen and field any questions that there might be after the second presentation.
non-fuel based revenue and the fuel charge. So the Commission has accepted option number 2 and will allow 100% pass-through of fuel. The methodology is the operating expenses, as was highlighted, plus the finance charge, or if there is any government obligation, is also factored. Now, to compute the revenue requirements, we need a test year. Generally, the approach is to use either 2 approach. You can use the most recent published audited financial statement, or you can use a forecast year, which includes 6 months actual and 6 months projected values of expenses and associated costs. The Commission, however, opt for option 2, where we use the forecasted 6 months actual because we consider it as most recent data, and 6 months projected value based on expenses we think that DOMLEC will incur. Not we think, that DOMLEC proposed that they will incur for the 6 months period. DOMLEC, of course, provided us with shared data that showed the actual on a monthly basis for a 6 month period and the projected value over a 6 month period, July to December 2023, and also actual from January to June 2023. DOMLEC also, next slide please. Okay, now the method to calculate the rate base. The rate base, as we said, are the utilities investment in fixed assets that are considered used and useful during a tariff period. As guided by our tariff regime document, this is the approach in determining the rate base. We look at the fixed asset or gross plant in service, less the accumulated depreciation, what Mr. Bill explained, working capital, construction work, and we less any adjustment. Now, DOMLEC provided us with a data set. Those data set came into schedules, and IRC, of course, reviewed all the data sets. I can tell you, of course, those figures or those line items, they were soft copy of Excel worksheet very voluminous, as it indicates all line items of the assets and operating expenses for the year in review. We reconcile those figures as best as possible, and in our opinion, those figures were quite reasonable. Of course, we deliberated upon them. We had meetings and we verified those figures. We did a comprehensive analysis of those figures. This, of course, was done by our regulatory consultant, and we worked as a team. So these are a nutshell of all the line items that we reviewed, the items on the gross assets, and all the relevant adjustment and summary data. And all these items were accompanied by various worksheets that we use to reconcile the gross figure under each line item. Again, we are just showing other items that form part of the rate base in terms of the working capital, operating expenses, and so on. And as I said, the reconciliation of those figures were done. Now, for gross plant in service, we, of course, had done an audit of DOMLEC fixed assets. That was done in 2021 by myself and the then utility engineer that was at the IRC then. We went all over the island where DOMLEC has assets. We did a sample under each category of asset to determine whether those assets existed, and we aim to reconcile those items as per DOMLEC fixed asset register then. So we've seen the land, we've seen the building, plant and machinery, and the asset, vehicle, furniture and fitting. And we less the adjustment. This adjustment, the 1.3 around of 1.4 million, that is the land at Tariff that DOMLEC purchased. Because the solar project will not form part of the tariff of the tariff rate exercise, because it's not factored, we consider it as not being used and useful. So it's not considered regulatory asset base on the premise that the project will not be undertaken during this tariff period. So the gross planting service, which we consider as a regulatory asset base, as per the audit, we had done an audit report. We shared that report with DOMLEC, and we had back and forth. We were able to streamline and then agree. We had already, for the T&D assets, we convened a partial audit, again because of the fact that some of the assets that existed because of Hurricane Maria and further updates were not done, we weren't able to reconcile that. But in the partial audit, we were able to match the sample data as per DOMLEC GIS, that's DOMLEC Geographic Information System. And then a partial audit, following the partial audit, we submitted the audit report. So we can attest that the rate base value is considered reasonable and of course acceptable by the Commission. From that, we deducted the accumulated depreciation. Again, we had done a depreciation study in the first leg of the tariff process. We got the net planting service. We agreed that, as highlighted by Mr. Vinaj, that the rate base is $163 million. To that, the return on investment is computed using the weighted average cost of capital. So 2 months back, we did the tariff review. As part of the tariff review exercise, we approved the WACC, or the weighted average cost of capital, and we got a pre-tax of 9.82 and a post-tax of 7.94%. We also look at their operating expenses, that operating administrative expenses. For us at the IRC, we factored a productivity target, which was 1% based on administrative, operating, and maintenance expenses, and we allowed as an adjustable deduction $473,000. Of course, depreciation studies was based on the depreciation study that was conducted in terms of the depreciation rate. The depreciation expense arrived as a result of the depreciation study is 13.2 million. We look at the income tax amount that is that should be factored in all operating expenses, and we got a total operating expenses of $53.9 million, and the return using the WACC post-tax, we got it as 13 million, giving us a revenue requirement of 63.9 million. 66.9 million. In Mr. Vinage schedule, he provided as 113, but as I said, the fuel charge is shown as a separated line item, so it is not factored. In other jurisdictions, it is factored as it may be factored, but as per our tariff review, we factored the fuel charge as a separate line item. And it shows that the other deduction, what we other items that were deducted are customer deposit. Customer deposit is like when you become a customer, you pay a 1%, a percentage for being a percentage for being like a customer of DOMLEC. And I think you can get interest, Clyde? Interest on that every year. Every year, annually. And the deferred revenue is the amount that customer pay for capital investment if they want to extend a capital work in there. So if somebody is living in a particular location and they want electricity, they have to incur additional cost to run the line so that they are connected. These are called the deferred revenue. The item after a while becomes DOMLEC asset because DOMLEC has to maintain those assets. We consider this amount as a deduction from the rate base, and of course the total in terms of the other rate base deduction came up to 40.7 million. This amount, of course, was deducted in determining the revenue requirements. And so that the commission, after conducting the comprehensive review, we felt that the amount are reasonable and justifiable. And of course, we consider that the test year of 163.6 million, we consider the operating expenses of 53.9 million, and the proposed revenue requirement of 66.9 or 67 million, using the test year of 2023 as reasonable on the normal operating condition. In the event that there is a catastrophic event, well, that might change the dynamics, but on the normal operation, we felt that is what. Of course, you have to factor level of inflation, whereby the revenue requirement may move every year. So that is just the baseline for 2023, but you have to factor inflation, particularly for operating expenses throughout the 3-year tariff period. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Louis. She did a good job. Okay, so we're at the points where we don't want to take too much time. And you have heard Mr. Vinage, you have heard Mrs. Louis on the revenue requirements. So we're not yet going to the questions, but the floor is open for your questions, comments, and then we will go to the questions that we have for responding.
Yeah. First of all, I heard about an actual and a projected, but the year we know the figures, the actual, right? 2023 was the test year, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
But the data we got at that time had included 6 months actual and 6 months projected.
Yeah. The calculation was pretty academic, but my question is, you allowed DOMLEC $66 million in revenue, right? Is that correct? 67.
67, yes.
Right.
Round it up.
But DOMLEC made a loss last year.
any input in terms of the data set that he worked on.
Okay.
You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. There's
One
another page.
moment. One
I'm
moment.
sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Bennett.
Yeah, just one other moving part that is not factored in here is to date, DOMLEC has not been recovering 100% of their fuel costs, and that will help once that's moved to a pure pass-through mechanism. That will also um, address some of the cash shortfall. That's it.
This calculation, is that related to the capital? I wasn't sure because I knew there was originally you were 25.6 and then reduced to $80 million. So I'm wondering if that is the 25.6 related to the capital. Or I'm picking up some other number. That's why that's a short. That's a confusion. The consultant on deal. Yeah, the $25.6 million capital. I'm not sure it's capital. No, I mean, was the reduction taken into consideration in the calculation? Oh, working capital. All right, okay, no problem. Yeah, working capital. Yeah, all right, cool. Yeah, yeah.
So you're not confusing very awkward. Thank you.
So how Clyde feel? You can make it with that revenue.
No, I think what we expect to see is increased revenue through
Sale.
yes, the sales. So, yeah, and demand charge application that is also something under consideration. And it will all pan out once we complete the rate proposal. Yeah, once we complete the rate proposal. So and that is maybe the next stage in the process. Yes, and well, the fuel pass through is supposed to bring roughly about $6 million in revenue. So it's certainly going to bring some additional revenue. Pardon me?
You'll make a profit for what? I'm not making it out there.
Well, if we are able to drive up sales, yes, I think we should be able to.
What are the proposed strategies for that? What are the proposed strategies for that?
The strategies for
Sales that you want to drive.
well, we hoping that the rates are not increased. Well, what we know is, or what we notice is that when there is a drop in rates, there is a increase in consumption. Now, the fuel surcharge is no longer going to be part of the equation. It's going to be not only something DOMLEC absorbs, so that will also help us to be more profitable. Right now, we are in a loss position, but it will certainly assist us in the profit and liquidity position.
And if it continues to be as hot as it's been over the past couple of years, there will be fairly high consumption. No, that's actually surprising because last year, the last 2 years were among. Sorry. I was saying in the last couple of years we've had very high revenues, and that particularly was driven by the temperatures because of all the air conditioning load. In fact, 2022 or 2023, we had as high sales as we've had going way back since, I mean, more than 10 years back since we've had those kind of levels of sales. And that's all driven by the temperature. Yeah, and we still do because diesel is expensive. So what? I'm always aware that fuel surcharge, you charge back some of the fuel to the customers. I know now you're going to get 100%, but what percentage were getting before? 98%, 90%? 97%, so you only
All right, so the fuel has two components. Fuel charge has two components. So one of the fixed component was embedded in DOMLEC's base rate. Okay, now surcharge, we always explain that. Surcharge means a charge on top of a charge. So the variable aspect of the fuel was what you see in what is called the surcharge. In the new tariff, there's going to be a complete pass-through, which we call the fuel cost. Okay, so before it was part of it was inbuilt in the base rate, and then the rest was the surcharge. So the surcharge was going to be variable part of it. So in explaining the 2.5%, it was like you have a shop and you sell merchandise and you put a discount factor on it for a period of time. Okay? Now that 2.5% was applied. Really and truly, it's a penalty that was applied onto DOMLEC while it was owned by private entity to ensure that they engage in competitive procurement for fuel, and in buying new generation assets, they will go for medium speed. So these are the two reasons that was applied. Now, since the IRC was created, DOMLEC applied for a removal of that 2.5% because they have met the criteria that they were forced to abide by. So it was decided then that the 2.5 will be removed when they have any new tariff review is undertaken. The first tariff review that's undertaken. So this is the first tariff review, although there was an attempt in 2014 and it wasn't successful. But this will be considered the first tariff review, and DOMLEC requested removal. So since it was agreed, we removed it. Okay, so it was the analogies that considered to have been a discount factor, and the customer was benefiting, but was removed because DOMLEC met the criteria that was imposed on government obligations that were imposed on them. Okay, and furthermore, DOMLEC is now government owned. So that is also a consideration and the decision. Government owned. So that is also a consideration that went into the decision making for the removal of that penalty. Yeah, so it's not, so customers are paying the actual cost that they would have paid if the penalty was not there.
Right. A question though to Domlec, in terms of the procurement, do you do forward purchasing for fuel, for example, especially if you foresee in the future that price is going to increase, so you could say upfront, I'm going to buy for the entire year at a certain rate that would be favorable to the customers? I'm asking.
A form of hedging, no, we don't. We have considered it, but I think at the time we looked at it, the cost of fuel was already too high to benefit from it. It was maybe during COVID time or something wrong here. So basically we'd have to wait to see if the price would go down, and then we would take advantage of it. But we did an analysis, but we didn't find it would be beneficial to us at that time. We have other utilities who were hedging, but they had actually gotten hedges at much more favorable prices then.
Another dimension to that is that we don't have enough storage on island. So in the DOMLEC case, they inherited Hess's infrastructure for storage in cul-de-sac, so they are able to do that. But we don't have that in Dominica.
But if you hedge, I do you must get all the quantities in, or you can get it by period. I mean, you
It's a
could.
contract. The hedge is a contract.
I know.
So you don't need all of it.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can. I hedge. The hedging is just for the price. I'm going to buy it at that rate now, and you will continue to give it to me based on how my demand at the same price. That's
Well,
what that's the type of hedging I'm looking at.
Okay. Well, if you have storage, it kind of makes it easier.
You have more questions, Mr. Dorival? Oh, okay, it might come back. Any more questions? Before we okay, so we can go to our questions today. Are there any questions from online? Okay. Wonderful. So we're moving on to the questions that we have. The respondents, to us, to the participants, to the attendees, and to anybody who is looking at the document. Number one, do you agree that it is not only in order, but also prudent for the Commission to accept for its consideration the application of the revenue requirement and the rate base that was submitted by DOMLEC? We've heard the consultants, Mr. Village, we've heard IRC from Mrs. Louis. So what do you think, respondents?
I mean, if the test years agreed upon, then I think. Yeah, I think it's yes. Yeah,
Okay. So we agree. Is that so? Okay. Unanimously. Someone.
Yeah,
Someone wants to contribute before we move to the next question?
Audio. Mr. Laville?
Hi, can you hear me?
We're hearing you.
Okay, just a quick question regarding the fuel. Now that it's a full pass-through, is there some level of performance that DOMLEC has to maintain? And I'm asking that from the standpoint that if all fuel is a pass-through and there's no requirement for certain levels of efficiencies, what is the incentive for them to be more efficient in their operation? Similarly, with the OPEX, I know that there was a review of their operations and maintenance charges. But again, what incentive is there for them to improve on those things going forward, as opposed to just recovering all of their expenses without having to meet some minimum level of efficiencies?
With the application of the new tariff regime for DOMLEC, the IRC is also going to apply key performance indices, which will feed into one of the key performance indices will feed into DOMLEC controlling its OPEX within certain limits, and we'll be monitoring that very closely by the IRC to ensure that they do. Now, it's a first time application of such an efficiency measure, but we're going to make sure that it is effective and that they don't engage in practices that are wasteful or inefficient. Okay, the details of that, I cannot go into it right now, but yes, we will be applying at least 3 of these KPIs out of 10 initially, and they are geared at DOMLEC improving its efficiency.
Yes, we can proceed. Will we proceed? Thank you, Mr. Case. So we are working. We're going to question number 2. Do respondents consider as fair and reasonable the operating expenses of 53.955 or 53.9 million proposed by DOMLEC as shown in the appendices to be factored in the determination of the revenue requirement for this tariff rate review? If not, please provide reasons. we're looking at the operating expenses. It's fair and reasonable?
Yes.
Fair and reasonable, everybody? I only heard Mr. Paul.
I said yes.
Oh, you took over, Mr. Dory? Okay. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we agree. That is fair and reasonable, and we move into question number 3. Do you consider again as fair and reasonable the value for inclusion of DOMLEC's proposed fuel charge of 46.5 million as full pass-through cost to customers used in the generation of energy? Mr. Dorrible, you asking questions. You ready, Mr. Dorrible, while we wait on you, Donna? Go ahead.
You see, I'm not totally I don't think it's fair to one point, to my question and to my suggestion of doing some hedging, that may reduce that proposed, because, I mean, as Mr. Larry said, what incentive do you have in just passing? I know recently DOMLEC had some high-speed generators during the issues that was generating diesel like YII. That was during the something that probably you don't want to put at your home. So, I mean, it was critical. They needed it. I don't know why they got those. Oh, they still have it? This kill people, man. So maybe that's part of the numbers. They need to get rid of that. Those generators are not designed for that purpose. And I've always said before, I don't know why many years ago DOMLEC didn't invest in those generators like DCP have. DCP have one that use all kind of, what do you call it? Heavy fuel. Yeah, so, and we would reduce that cost a lot, because it means then no matter what, we're just gonna get it, we have to pay for it. So I think that is the area that should have more KPIs, and ensure that the type of generation they're using is efficient, and not just buying and just passing on. Because trust me, I don't know what that figure says, because I don't know what they could save. Maybe it could have been $50 million rather than $46 million, based on the type of equipment that they were using. And I don't know why we bought that high-speed generator. We brought that high-speed generator to be used on poor people's back.
Thank you, Mr.
I don't agree.
You don't think it's fair and reasonable? Okay.
Okay, so what I can say to that is that hopefully the geothermal plant will conclude or be completed by the end of next year, and therefore the fuel needs by DOMLEC will significantly reduce in generation. And at this point in time, yes, they still have high-speed sets doing base load, and we're hoping that we can see what we can do with that after we can deal with that after the geothermal plant comes comes online. That was done long ago, because it was cheaper for them to purchase high-speed sets and deploy them for generation.
Yeah, so the having the use of high-speed generation, that has been before a lot of us time. I think it was from CDC. Yeah, so DOMLEC management now didn't really have a say in that, because they were already in operation, right? The fact of the matter is we have to maintain, and we have to continue to use the high speed, just in order that we do not have to proceed with learning load shedding and stuff like that. There's also a reduction in fuel because of the fact that we use part of the hydro, although it's not as efficient as it would be. So I think it is necessary to say yes to that question until the geothermal comes in. And after the geothermal comes in, then we can have a look at what else can be done. Once we start to get rid of some of the high-speed generators as part of the exit strategy for DOMLEC.
I'd like to add to what Clyde said, that apart from the geothermal plant, there's also a battery system which will be utilized mostly for spinning reserve that would assist us to reducing fuel usage instead of having high-speed sets also for spinning reserve requirements. This battery system should be online from the second quarter of next year.
I think, yes, I agree so that we can move forward, because once we agree to the test year, it means that we agree to the real cost that the test year produced.
All the nitty-gritties of it.
Yes, so actually, yes, I think it's reasonable.
Okay. So we're moving on. We're trying to be reasonable and fair. Question 4 is asking us to consider as fair and reasonable the values for inclusion of the historic costs of utilities plants, net adjustments of 396.5 million, construction work in progress of 7.8 million, and inventory balances of 14.9 million as provided by DOMLEC, for that to be factored in the determination of the rate base. Do you think that's fair and reasonable? Mr. Paul gave an overall answer. Yes, you gave an overall answer. So we agree. But we still need to hear it from the floor or from our online persons who are listening. Is there a question again, Donna?
There was a comment, so for posterity, I would like it to be noted and documented. Miss Estelle Laville is commenting that I don't think it is feasible to increase charges to the customer at this point. The current charges increase the cost of doing business. And that's the comment. Okay. No question.
Duly noted. Yes, Mr. Dorival.
But the question I have, I mean, we spoke about whether we should consider investing $24 million in solar. And then we talk about investing $24 million into solar, the possibility. Now, if we are to invest that $24 million in solar, because that information that came after, how much of that $46 million we would have saved? So if we had brought that before, then probably that would be a consideration. I spent $24 million solar, I would only have to spend $20 million in fuel. Or I would only have to spend $30 million in fuel. So that would be a serious consideration, taking the fact that you would save from the fuel cost, and then it's basically going to spend it anyway, and then the consumer now will not have that donkey on their back. That $47 million is still troubling me, to tell you the truth. Because I think if I spend $24 million and I'm gonna, even if I save $15 million from that $46 million, it's a goal. It's a significant thing.
Yeah, but we still have to factor that the $24 million would have to factor into the rate base.
matter, but then you will fail in the long run.
Well, yep.
Because I don't want to do that because, I mean, $24 million into a solar farm, you wouldn't need that amount of fuel. You might probably need 50%, even 30%. Within 2 years, you pay that, you pay back of that. You understand? So I mean, you may not have the cash up front to do it, but you take a loan and you pay it from that same revenue, from that same anticipated expense that you're going to have.
Yes. So remember, we have to take into consideration everything hinges on the level of your demand. In terms of added generation. Now, if we have the geothermal coming on stream, which we
You mean you pay for it in 2 years? You would, if you did the calculation, whereas the geothermal comes, you're going to pay for it.
But is there the demand for an additional 4.5 megawatts? So everything is based on your demand. If there is a need, you invest in it. Now remember, there's the investment in geothermal that has not yet materialized, but it's under construction.
My point is that geothermal is going to give you 10 megawatts.
Right, but you have to factor your level of demand. It's something that's progressive over time.
Yeah, but then the point is, based on your demand, and I'm looking purely at what I see before me. DOMLEC is saying that they're going to need $47 million in fueling. How much of that I will save back to the solar farm of 4.something megawatt? 10 million, 15 million, 20 million, in 2 years I'll pay for it. So whether your demand, in other words, if it is the solar farm come into place, you're going to still need some level of generation. So it's not going to come in place now, it's going to come in place in 2025, and I can bet by me.
But the payback period for the solar farm is more than 2 years.
How much it is? How much it is?
I haven't done the assessment.
Now, I'm not going to give you a firm answer because I don't remember what the figures is. But I was involved in looking at the cost for the solar farm, right? And we did take into account, we have taken into account the reduction in fuel cost as well. The drawbacks with the solar is that there are times, based on the analysis that was done, there was a consultant that was hired for that by IRC previously, there was some curtailment in the output. When the geothermal and the solar came on stream, there would be some curtailment, and the payback period was something on the order of 15 years or something like that. So it wasn't an immediate sort of great benefit that you will get right away. I think, yes, because you have to look at the production of the solar. It's not just you're going to get back. The solar produces a certain amount, and that certain amount has a value, right? Yeah. So it's not as attractive as it appears. The most attractive it appears is if it's done with DOMLEC themselves investing that money, right?
So currently,
Give him the mic. Thank you.
My question, so currently your high-speed generator gives you how much power? 5 megawatts, 10, 8, 12?
You cannot answer it. Depends on the time of the depends on what else.
On average, currently, I know currently you do hydro plus generator.
So the problem with what you're trying to get done is that at night, I'm just using ballpark figures, at night the load is 10 megawatts. In the day, the load varies up to, say, between 13 and 18 megawatts. So there's a whole swing in that whole period. So different generators come on at different times. You rotate them in and out to make sure you don't overwork anything and lengthen the lifetime of all. So to be able to say this is how much it's on is a very difficult question to answer in black and white.
Yeah, but we are clear that
the volume is in day period, and solar will give you the volume during the day, and that's when the sun, and generally what's happening now is that we have more sun. Global warming is real, so you're getting a lot of, that's why you have a lot of usage of AC during the day. So if you do a farm, I find it difficult I don't believe in that number. 15 years sounding unrealistic. I don't believe from my personal, I have solar, from my personal use of solar, it will take me about 3 to 4 years to pay for that, pay for the thing. So to say 15 years, I don't know what solar system you have. It is a very expensive system, but the system, the price of solar has gone down so much, and it's so readily available, and the sunlight right now is that probably 15 years ago.
Remember, utility scale vis-a-vis a personal, you have a solar farm at your disposal is night and day. Utility scale and somebody generating their own energy from solar is two different things altogether.
Okay, so
But
yeah,
what I was trying to explain was that when the two systems, geothermal and solar, comes in, you're gonna have curtailment of one or the other, and geothermal cannot be curtailed, so the solar has to be curtailed. You have to reduce the amount of solar generation, and therefore that's gonna slow down your payback. And also building a solar system, what we did on the planning was to factor in a fairly resilient solar because of what happened during Maria, right? So it's a more expensive solar system than normal, right?
You get in the
and furthermore, Lorival, the amount quoted there might only be valid for 1 year, because the geothermal comes in end of 2025. Customers will see a significant reduction in the fuel charge. Significant.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We are appreciating the discussion and the questions. So we move into question. Oh, before we move to 5, do we agree now? I think Mr. Dorival, yes, we've handled it nicely. Number 5, do you consider as reasonable that 1.3 million be disallowed from the regulatory asset base as amongst not considered used and useful for this rate making exercise? We agree. Thank you. We move into number 6. Do you agree to the methodology or the approach that's used by DOMLEC to determine the proposed rate base of 163 million as 163 million as denoted denoted in table point? Well, we had the table in the document. If not, please provide reasons. Question number 6. That's the rate base that Mr. Vinny spoke about, and Mrs. Louise spoke about it. Yes.
Your presentations now, sorry?
You don't have the revenue requirement.
Or the consultative documents?
Use the slide that Connie had.
Okay, that's what
Yes. And she explained it there. Yeah.
Okay, revenue requirements for this presentation.
That's the proposed rate base.
Do you
Yeah.
You took it over.
The rate based on what you all agree on that, colleague.
Okay. So Mr. Paul was holding us up. So okay. So we move into number 7. Okay. Do we consider the proposed revenue requirements of 66.9 as determined by DOMLEC and as we saw previously and heard is reasonable, acceptable value that would enable DOMLEC to provide efficient and reliable services and at the same time achieve a fair return on investment?
Yes.
Okay. That's a big yes. It's a resounding yes. We're moving to number 8. Now, do you agree that an inflation rate of 4.45% for 2023 as published by the Central Statistical Office in Dominica should be used to forecast DOMLEC's operation, maintenance, and administrative expenses for the 3-year tariff period?
Well, I thought inflation is coming down. So now once you may take the 4 for a 3-year period, I figure you'd be projecting a decrease, in inflation. Because it's down coming.
Well, based on market trend, it is increasing. Yes, inflation has increased based on in Dominica and the rest of the world. We are hoping because of what's taking place in the US, probably it might go down, but we are just looking at the trend, and we use the consumer price index. We also use central statistic data and World Bank data. So we use central statistic data, consumer price index US, and then we were able to see what the trend showed for commodities.
Did you say US? Because
At the time.
I was saying it dropped from 9 to 3.
Well, at the time of doing the report, that's what it was showing. I do not know if after the election, the trend didn't change, because those things are evolving over time, because we saw the stock market, the movement in trend after the US election in terms of the stock market, NASDAQ and Standard & Poor's. But when we localize it to our environment, based on central statistic data, it is shown as 4.45%.
And we know. And we know it takes a little while.
I do not know if Mr. Vinage has any feedback or can provide any feedback on that as it relates to external factors.
External factors also take a little time to trickle down to us.
Yes, Mr.
Mr. Vinage, can you hear us? Do we consider the ECCB rates, Mrs. Lee?
We did not take that into consideration, but that's something we can review if, based on the consensus given at this consultation, if you figure with something that we can take on board, then that is what the consultation process is all about. Okay. Point taken.
So we take. Can you make that statement again and state who you are, Miss?
I was just since the ECCU is the one who governs our region, I was just wondering if you had factored in what the report had in terms of inflation rate. That's what I was asking. You spoke about the US and all that. I was just wondering our localized environment, ECCU government, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank.
What you wanted this comment on?
The inflation rate.
Mr. Vinage, did you have a discussion? The council was seeking your input on the inflation.
I'm sorry.
We didn't hear the question.
You didn't hear the question.
It was a statement we're making. Okay. The question is whether we are taking into consideration inflation rate that's going down now.
I would defer to your either. I don't have an opinion that I would consider intelligent. I would defer to your central bankers.
Okay. So we've noted that we will look at the ECCB's rates. We all in agreement with that, right? Okay.
That's one thing. If they providing that the ECCB rate is higher than our local rates, right? We keep what we have. Okay.
Because I heard the ACC governor had a discussion this week, and he alluded to the reduction about 2%. So I just wanted to know whether that was documented or whether we had looked into that.
Okay, so if the ECCB rate is lower than statistics rate, we are going with we are proposing that we use the ECCB rate instead. Okay.
And one of the challenges I have in this is, yes, we all want low rates, but we have to use proper procedure and principles when assessing these things. At the end of the day, are we choosing the ECCB rate because we feel it's more reflective of what will be going on, or are we choosing the statistics rates because it's more reflective of what we believe is going on in the country? That's kind of where our discussion should be aligned, not necessarily what is lower, but what we feel is more reflective of our reality.
As to what you said, I know they do projections over a 3-year period. So if we could just use an average, maybe of the 3 years, to come up with a figure, you understand what I'm saying? So we can look at their reports and see what they have outlined. And if it's lower than the 4% over the 3-year average, then we can consider that as well. You know, that's a consideration. Unless you have something by which to base to justify your rate then in that case.
Okay. Noted.
Clearly noted. Thank you very much. Is there another question? Mr. Paul was saying something?
Not really, though. I mean, I just want to say the concern wasn't about this year, was the projection. So what I'm saying, to be real, if something going down, then you shouldn't just use the average. That's all I was saying.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're moving to question 9, and it's the usual last question. Do you have any other related comments or recommendations? I think we've done very well.
The only thing, I don't know where it will come in the next consultation. Will there be a type of rate for people that cannot afford the indigent? Okay.
I think Mr. Oidi alluded to that earlier, the different categories that we're looking at.
Residential
Use your mic, please.
They have choice, but it's better. For the residential customers, there will be two classes of rates. One that will for the considering people that are
indigent.
Yes, indigent, right. And the other one, but they still have a choice to decide where they want to be within the two choices.
They would say the lesser one of
Anyway, just call it lifeline because it was really designed that way. So it considers those people at or below the poverty line that cannot afford the other option. So yes. So soon, by next consultation, all of this will be presented. Okay.
Any more questions or comments from the floor or from online? Okay. Thank you. I see we enjoying ourselves. We have something we don't know?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure. What is the specific tool?
Again, Ms. Esther Laville says, from the customer side, for hotel rooms to run AC units, it costs $15 a day. That comes directly from hotel room rate before all other operational expenses. 450 US million, that is 1.2 million. Residents cannot afford to use the AC at all, and as climate heats up, their health will suffer in the heat. Okay, that's 450, so I'll take that again. For hotel rooms to run AC units, it costs $15 a day. That comes directly from hotel room rates before all other operational expenses. $450 per month. That is 1,250 EC per month. Residents cannot afford to use the AC at all, and as climate heats up, their health will suffer in the heat.
Okay, so the IRC has given consideration to all those concerns, and that is why one of the reasons we changed the structure, apart from other interventions that will be taken. So how it will work is that it will allow the customer to have choice and also allow them to maximize on the use of off-peak rates, which could be the differential could be as much as 10 cents between peak and off-peak rates. In the simulations and the data that we have mined so far supports that structure. And the hotels and commercial entities, other commercial will significantly benefit from it, as also residential. Because if the climate change issue, let us just take the evening time when people go to sleep and they cannot sleep because it's too hot or whatever, then they will be able to invest in a AC unit that can provide cooling for them.
Thank you, Edie. Thank you.
Okay. So this is what it is, and we hoping that people exploit the off-peak periods to maximize consumption of, I don't know, whatever they need to do that they used to do during the peak period.
Okay, so we're good. We could be better than good, but we're very good. Yeah.
ECCB has inflation rate end of period 2023 at 2.16%, and inflation rate period average for 2023 at 3.8%.
3.8, so it's close to the
period average.
Okay. Okay, so we will look into it. Any more questions from online?
No.
Okay. So we're coming to this point where we appreciate what has just happened, or what the process that we're going through, and we just want to continue the momentum. And we're at the point where I'm going to call on Mr. Timothy to give the thank you to you and to you and to you. Vote of thanks. Oh, yes. Edie will give the summary, and then Jason will give the vote of thanks. I took it that we had a long summary.
Good evening to everyone, both in person and online. Just to recap, okay, the revenue requirement on the 5-year capital expenditure consultations are vital components of the rate-making process or setting process. They ensure that the utility will meet its financial obligations, infrastructure needs while maintaining fairness and transparency in their pricing. Through stakeholder engagement and regulatory oversight, these consultations aim to balance the utilities' needs with the interests of consumers and the broader public. Okay, so consequently, the Commission has taken note of all comments, concerns, questions on the revenue requirement and the 5-year capital expenditure plan for DOMLEC, and you can be assured that these will be reviewed and addressed and communicated back to you. The timelines for the related events after this consultation are as follows. So the first issue of the document was October 8th, which was disseminated to various parties. The public consultation today, the period of time extends up to November 28th, when questions and comments are still open or can be sent to the IRC for consideration. So there's still a window of opportunity for the public and other entities to pose questions and comments to the IRC on the information that was the center of this consultation this evening. Okay, the response close will be November 29th. And then comments on the first response and publication of the second issue of the document will be December 13th. All of that time, the public and other concerned or interested parties can contact the IRC for any information or pose questions and comments. Response close for the second phase of consultation is December 27th. And the statement of results and Commission's decision will be produced within the period January 3rd to 10th of 2025. I see 2024, there was 2025. Okay, so this is the proposed dates. They are all in the documents that were shared with you prior to this in-person consultation. So again, I'd like to say that after reviewing all the evidence and inputs with the alignment, with the stated dates, the Commission will make its final determination on both the revenue requirement and the 5-year capital expenditure for DOMLEC. Thank you.
I think everybody is tired and ready to go home, not true? All right, me too. But really, I'd like to thank everybody for their participation. We really appreciate the feedback. From everyone, the participants here, the listening public, whoever attended virtual, whoever called in to give their comments. We do appreciate that. Because really your feedback matters. Without that, we cannot do a proper job representing what you want us to do for you. We need to know what you want so that we can balance everything out. Also like to thank the DOMLEC team, the consultant, Mr. Vinage, Clyde, who's always available when we have requests. We can just call him and he'll do his best to get back to us. So the management team at DOMLEC, the staff, and how they've worked with us, because even though sometimes we shout and scream at each other, and yes, we do sometimes shout and scream at each other, we work on overcoming that and coming to a consensus on the best way forward. So thank you very much for that. The Emo team who are here to help us be online, thank you as always. Our stenographer, Maureen Peter, always there helping us. The IRC staff, because we have some staff in the background who do all the hard work to make sure this gets put together. Y'all are comfortable, we are comfortable. So I'd really like to thank the IRC staff for that, who worked diligently to get us to this stage. A special thanks to the CRC team, that's the Customer Representative Committee, because they do a lot of groundwork in the communities, getting back information to us on how things are going. Last and not least, obviously we have to say thank you to God to getting us here, giving us the strength, giving us the wisdom, and helping us get through the tough times. Things aren't always going to be well, but He gives us the strength to get through. So, thanks God. All right, and with that, have a good evening, everybody.
Don't go without your snacks. But there's always somebody that we don't say thank you to. We say thank you to Jason for doing the vote of thanks. So at this time, we say a pleasant good night to you. Those who have to drive safely, get home safely.